We say we celebrate the Eucharist, but do we? We say the Eucharist nourishes and empowers us to live our lives. Does it? If our Eucharists are truly to become celebrations that give meaning to the way we live our lives, we need to first understand what we celebrate and why we do what we do. Or else we could lose the meaning of these rituals. For this, we would need to go back in time, understanding the meaning of the Eucharist when it first began. We remember certain special days in our lives, and on occasions, we even celebrate these days, birthdays, anniversaries, and so on. The Israelites also celebrated certain important events in their lives through memorials. These memorials were rituals through which they remembered and relived the past saving action of God with celebration. They performed an action or ritual and invited God to continue to act. This brought them the assurance of God's providence in the present, and it also offered to them the hope for the future. One such memorial was the Passover, which the Jews celebrated each year. It was a memorial of their exodus from slavery to freedom. At these Passover memorials, they would eat unleavened bread with bitter herbs, red sauce, and a roasted firstborn lamb, which they had sacrificed. All this reminded them of the meal their ancestors ate in Egypt. The absence of leaven in the bread reminded them that it was a meal of haste. It also meant that they were to leave behind the corruption of the past and start anew. The red sauce reminded them of the red soil on which they toiled as slaves and the blood they shed. The bitter herbs were a reminder of their bitter days, while the sacrificed lamb was a reminder of the blood of the lamb that marked their doorposts and saved them from death that passed over their houses in Egypt that night. At the Last Supper, as Jesus celebrated the Passover memorial, he recalled God's faithfulness and how God continued to act in the lives of his people. The Last Supper pointed to the immediate future, to his own self-offering on the cross. Jesus received the strength he needed to go through his passion with the assurance that his life would not end meaninglessly in death. For the early Christians, their Eucharists were memorials not of the Exodus, but of the new Passover, Jesus' death and resurrection. At these memorials, they listened to readings from the scriptures that reassured them of God's fidelity. They shared a meal as Jesus had instructed, and they relived the mystery of his death and resurrection. This inspired them to face their own persecution with faith and courage, with the confidence that God would never desert them. Every Eucharist is a memorial. In fact, you will realize that the very words memorial, remember, memory occur in the Eucharistic prayer. For example, do this in memory of me. Remember, Lord, your church spread throughout the world. Remember also our brothers and sisters. The Eucharist helps us call to mind God's blessings and consequently renews our covenant with God. The readings, responses, prayers, and actions are reminders of God's fidelity and saving action seen especially in the death and resurrection of Jesus. The Eucharistic memorial offers us the strength to rise above our present situation and brings us hope for the future.